Hi fellow We See Thestrals members. This week's discussion topic is of course the Harry Potter films, suggested by Dylan. Congratulations Dylan once again on your nuptials. Very eventful last week that we've had. Thank you to Bex for your help, our quite successful collaboration in our rescue mission to get poor David and Kelly out of the dungeon in Malfoy Manor. Mama Umbridge let us down somewhat, and I'm sick of her texting me. It's taking up all my phone time. But we got them out, all is safe and sound, and we can put all of that ugliness behind us and just focus on happy memories regarding the wedding, because it was a beautiful affair, and I wish Dylan and Luna all the very best. So, on to the Harry Potter films. Now, as purists and as avid Potterheads, we were always going to have issues with the series being adapted to the big screen. This is a world, a series of characters, environments, situations that have lived in our heads for so long. We all have very particular tastes as to how we see things, and it was never going to meet everybody's idea of how it should be. When it's taken into a director's hands, it's someone else's creation and they get to put their own version out to the world. So it was never going to be wholeheartedly satisfying, and I do have very mixed feelings about all of the films as a whole. Some have been more impressive than others. It's been very hit and miss. So the most impressive film of the saga for me has been Azkaban, Alfonso Cuarón's film, because it was the first time that I sat back and appreciated the Harry Potter movies as a cinematic experience. The tone, the cinematography, the aesthetic just appeal of the film, the way it looked, the way atmosphere was created. The use of music especially was probably my favourite score of all the Harry Potter music. The performances from the trio, I felt there was a really notable leap in the third film. Of all the supporting actors that we've had in there, I loved Gary Oldman and David Thewlis. And yeah, I mean, certainly I can still sit and watch that and bitch, because they do still leave a shitload out. That Marauders, God, it's always going to drive me insane. And yes, they twist a lot of things around, character motivations in just simple lines, the fact that they threw out some really good dialogue. Every film's guilty of that. Azkaban maybe more significantly so because it's my favourite book and I take more note of it. But as a film to watch, it's probably been the most impressive. However, the most impressive Harry Potter film thus far has been Deathly Hallows, and I'm sure that part 2 is going to be just as good, if not more so. It was the first time I've really been satisfied with what I've seen on screen. I felt that the mood that was captured was perfect. The performances really blew me away. The trio, I couldn't believe the kind of things that I was seeing from them this time, because my expectations really have been lowered because they've disappointed me time and time again. I was so happy with what they did, and things were kept in there or brought back in because of past mistakes. They had to suddenly draw this shit back into there because they're like, oh, we left that out in the past, whoops. But suddenly they were trying to, I think, make amends for past wrongs, and yeah, things were in there, it progressed really beautifully, and I was just very happy. Sat there at the end thinking, good, thank you, about bloody time. So yeah, those two stand out, Azkaban and Deathly Hallows. And I figure, I mean, if they're going to get it right, it may as well be at the end. So I have very high hopes for Deathly Hallows Part 2. Let's see how we go. Probably the films I've been least impressed with, I mean, obviously films 1 and 2, a lot of people just don't bother to count them, and half the time I don't in my mind either. I think they were so family friendly, they were so cute, they were very schmaltzy. I mean, I think that it was just the novelty of getting to see the Harry stories on screen at last that was the most enjoyable thing about them. So the films themselves actually weren't that great. Of course the kids were very young and new and inexperienced, but their performances were more wooden than a Nimbus 2000. Yeah, and it just, both of them, the pacing was a big issue. It just plodded along. Goblet of Fire, I think, had the most mass appeal, probably out of all the films, so lots of non-Harry fans seem to really, really enjoy that one. I think because Mike Newell did a really good job of capturing this atmosphere of all the teens in this school always being together and doing team-like things. And also, of course, the Triwizard Tournament lent that action-adventure appeal and gave extra boost of adrenaline to it, so I think that, you know, really caught the general interest of cinema goers. Order of the Phoenix, again, that's one of my favourite books, so I was very picky with that one. And they did an okay job. I wasn't too unhappy with it. Probably the thing that impressed me the most in that one was the possession scene. I think that Dan Radcliffe's acting in that tiny little moment was really, really, really stunning. And even though, I mean, it wasn't at all like it was in the book, it was still very effective and moving, and I did cry. What else? I was very upset, though, of course, that Harry's breakdown scene was not included in Order of the Phoenix. I didn't expect that it would be. It might have felt a bit jarring with the tone that they were going for towards the end there, but, I mean, it's one of my favourite scenes in the entire saga to read, and I really wanted to see Dan try and tackle that, but... And then Half-Blood Prince I was actually pretty unhappy with. I hate whenever they try and insert comedy, and usually the person we blame for that is Rupert Grint. It's not his fault, he's just doing what he's told, but the stupid facial expressions that I was over him doing them by film 2, so the fact that they were still going in film 6 made me just want to ram my head against a wall like Dobby. And the romantic comedy elements of that story, I felt they were so heavy-handed and forced and unnecessary, and I was getting sick of it. It was wasting time. I wanted more Tom Riddle. Because of all the films, the Half-Blood Prince teaser trailer was the one that got me the most excited with young Tom Riddle. That was freaking me out, and I thought, this is fantastic. And then I was so disappointed when the film actually came out. So that was a letdown, and I was getting sick of the comedy because it was driving me nuts. So, I mean, the more serious and the more, I hate to use the term, but the more adult they try and not make the films, but if they take their stuff seriously, then it feels like it isn't as much of an insult to the books and my own emotional responses to them, but that's just me. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the films, and Leanne, we will hear from you tomorrow.